Now, I talk a lot about developing systems of habitat improvement on your property that work as a cohesive unit to move deer during daylight hours, and then you can build a hunting system from that. You have morning stands, afternoon stands, evening stands, rut stands, and late season stands, stands you can shoot does from, bucks from, and you're building bedding areas, travel corridors, daytime food sources on your own land, stand locations all in between. And when it comes down to it, a really huge advantage of that is that you can stick one trail camera on that entire movement, and that trail camera will reveal a lot of in-depth information that you can use about your whitetail herd as it relates to your hunting practices, your hunting potential, and ultimately your herd potential. This is a location right here I've talked about extensively. This relates to several stands. We're adding another stand. This entire movement of bedding, travel, mock scrape, travel, bedding areas, food sources, water holes, other mock scrapes, other tree stands, all fits together. If any one of those movements is blown out of place, we hunter pressure, we overpressure the food source, we overpressure the bedding areas, we overpressure in between, then we lose our ability to actually contain that deer. We spook those deer, and this property quickly turns into a nocturnal property. That's why we have so many stands. We can use stands like this for north winds during the morning hours or evening. Move stands like that. We can use those back there for southwest winds in the morning only, southeast winds in the evening over here, southerly winds in this stand. And this relates to all the stands. We have lots of winds, lots of access points that we can come in at. But this camera that's located right here tells us a whole lot about what's going on with our property the entire hunting season. It tells you the timing of bucks. I believe firmly that there's an annual whitetail shift. And so we'll find bucks on the neighboring properties down in the ag fields below or to the sides. And those bucks will be there all summer long. But from the end of September to the end of October, they shift. The camera in this location not only tells me when there's bucks in this spot shifting around, but when those bucks are actually using their fall bedding areas over here, fall travel, fall cruising, and certainly the food sources down below where we have a couple other cameras in between. This camera tells me not only when those bucks are here, when they're not here in December, maybe when they leave the property. I expect a lot of these bucks, they're usually here end of September, early October through end of November, early December, and in through early January. And then they're back off to their wintering areas, which a lot of times are their summer areas too. They're kind of one and the same around here. So it tells me the timing of the bucks, tells me when they're here, when they're not. Also tells me when the rut takes place. So when I see daytime cruising activity, and I'm talking daytime meaning 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where bucks are randomly moving through here and they're hitting the scrape on a daily basis, then it tells me that rut is in full gear. It tells me when the pre-rut's starting, which is usually the end of October, usually the October 20th, October 25th, when we have a cold front come through and it's actually below average temperatures, it's comfortable cruising conditions for those bucks. We really see them to start to pick up and get active, and so will the scrape. It gets active every year. That's why we hung a vine here. We wanted to make sure this is a permanent scrape here. So it tells me the timing of when bucks are on and off the property. It tells me the timing of the rut. And one thing that's very important that I don't know if a lot of hunters really analyze their cameras for, it tells me if I'm applying too much hunting pressure to this land. How does it tell me that? It tells me the consistency of use. It shows me the consistency of use. So if I'm hitting those food plots down there and I know I spook some deer, all the time it shows that those movements up here disappear. The problem is deer have about 2 to 3 weeks of forgiveness. I believe that they'll come back on the property, they'll start using those daytime movements 2 to 3 weeks later, they'll forgive that intrusion. But when it's hunting season, and say in Michigan it starts October 1st, the rut starts the end of October, peak rut during early November, gun season during November 15th, hunters are hitting the property every week or two, consistently all the time. Those deer really never have a chance to just fully forgive your intrusions that you had in the past. So notice that if your neighbors are hunting, if there's a lot of pressure involved, really use your cameras to say, okay, XYZ neighbors were here this weekend, it really shut the deer movement down in this location on the property. That tells you ways that you maybe need screening on that side of the property, you maybe need a berm, maybe a hinge cut line where you can actually effectively seal off that neighbor intrusion and that neighbor movement. Tells you things that you need to do on your property that relate to hunting pressure, and it might not be your own pressure too, it might be your neighbors. So the timing when bucks are on and off your property, or the deer herd in general, the timing of the rut, when it starts, when it really peaks at its fullest potential, and then when it ends. And then also it tells you how much hunting pressure you're placing on your property with your hunting practices, and if you need to make some changes, whether it be your own hunting practices or making changes to actually match what your neighbors are doing on their land, so that you can hunter pressure proof your property from your neighbors. One camera in one location, yes, it can tell me everything that happens within this 500 yards of movement. We use other cameras too, and that tells me of movements coming in from the side, maybe to neighboring bedding areas. But within this window right here, you can use 1 to 2 cameras at most to tell you everything you need to know about what's going on in your property, good and bad, with bucks and does, and as it relates to the rut, and as it relates to hunting pressure. Try it. Put a lot of faith in putting these habitat improvements together. We rely on this camera a lot in this location because we have 3 stands right now. We actually have a 4th one over here, a 5th one that's going in. We have a lot of stands that relate to this down below. And that, managing this pressure, managing the timing of the bucks, knowing when they're actually relating to our habitat improvements, lets us know if we're doing a good job overall, but it lets us know our potential, and it lets us know how well that we can actually have an attempt to manage our herd and our hunt on just 30 acres of cover. Try it. Try the 1 camera, try 2 cameras, define habitat improvements, and it's amazing what just one single location can give you and offer you, and the information and intel that you couldn't find any other way but by using a trail camera.